Welcome to your Friday edition of Mark Madness. Today, we're going to conclude our week by concluding Mark chapter 4. Specifically, we're going to look at Mark chapter 4, verses 35 to 41. And this is a great story for a lot of reasons. I encourage you to stop the video here and read the text before I walk through it. So pause the video, read those 6 verses, and just kind of get the story in your mind. Hopefully you've done that. And there's just a couple of things that I want to point out about this story. First of all, I want you to think about the significance of this storm. Geographically, this is a location that is where storms can really develop and they can be quite severe. You have the Sea of Galilee, which is several hundred feet below sea level. And then within 30 miles or so, you have some pretty high mountains. So you can get some cold air off of the mountains going down to the warmer air below sea level, and it can just really cause some nasty storms. But these are experienced fishermen that Jesus is with. These are people who have been on the Sea of Galilee all of their lives. So the idea that they are in the midst of a storm that scares them, that they're in the midst of a storm that they're not used to, this was a big storm. This was a bad place to be, and it scared even very seasoned and experienced fishermen. Now, combine that with how people viewed the sea. We know from the ancient Near East, we know from a lot of cultures around that time, and even throughout history, that people are scared of the depths of the sea and the depths of the ocean. I know we're not in the ocean right now, but even the depths of a sea. Think about how much we don't know about what lies beneath the sea even now. Now, take that knowledge a couple thousand years ago, and they really didn't have an understanding of the depths. It was a very fearful place to be. It was a fearful thing to think about, often associated with evil. Could this be one of the reasons why in Revelation chapters 21 and chapters 22 that it says there is no sea? Is that literal? Or is that metaphorical to say that there is no evil, there is none of this mystery that's left? But they were so fearful of it because it was such a mystery that only God had power over the sea. That's important because that'll come up at the end of the story. But as they're going through this, and Jesus is sleeping on a cushion, Mark says, they wake Jesus up and they ask him this question. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on the cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" That's a fascinating question because they're saying, Jesus, don't you care? Jesus, don't you love us? Jesus, don't you care that we are in the midst of this storm? That we are in the midst of this thing that even we aren't used to? There seems to be a premise behind the question. And I think that premise is applicable for us today because I think it's a premise that we often share. If God loves us, wouldn't he prevent the storms in our lives? Wouldn't he prevent the difficult times in our lives? If God cares for us, wouldn't these things just be taken away from us right now? And that seems to be the premise behind the question that they're asking. Jesus, don't you care? In other words, if you cared, Jesus, this wouldn't be happening. But the story is important because Jesus seems to be challenging this premise. He seems to be challenging the premise that if God is a loving God, then all bad things will cease right here and right now. It's almost as if Jesus is saying, no, you've got it wrong. I do love you. I do care, but I still allow storms. I still allow difficult times. I still am not giving you perfect understanding of all that is going on around you. I think that's really applicable for us because it's easy for us in the midst of coronavirus, in the midst of being sheltered and things like that, to ask that question, God, don't you care? If you cared about this world, couldn't you just end that right now? And certainly we believe that God has the power. And I'm not saying we know the answer as to why God isn't ending things right now. I think we have a eschatological answer. We know that in the future, when Jesus returns, things will be taken care of completely. But he doesn't right now. And what he does is he challenges their faith. And it's interesting when he challenges their faith because his purpose is not so much to talk about the amount of their faith. Rather, he's just saying, what is the object of your faith? It could be translated, where is your faith right now? And it's almost as if Jesus is saying, I'm the object of your faith. However much or however little faith you have, it needs to be focused and directed towards me. I'm the object of your faith. You can trust me in the midst of this. And of course, the story ends with Jesus calming the storm. Jesus does that which only God can do, to have control over the winds and to settle those mysterious, evil waves and undercurrents of this evil, mysterious sea. And I love how the passage ends. The passage ends with the disciples asking themselves a question. Who is this? Who is this that even the winds and the sea obey him? Well, that's the exact question that Mark has been trying to answer for 4 questions, isn't it? Mark has been spending these first several chapters, and he's going to keep doing it until chapter 8, revealing who Jesus is, revealing his authority, revealing his kingship. And so the disciples at this point ask themselves a question that we need to be asking, because it's the question that Mark wants us to ask. It's the question that Mark wants us to have in the forefront of our minds. Who is this guy? Who is this Jesus? Because that's the question he's been answering for 4 chapters. Think back on all the things that Jesus has said and done in these first 4 chapters. That starts to give us an answer to the question, who is this that even the winds and the sea obey him? I'm going to link to 2 videos today. It's a song by Casting Crowns, and I think it's a great song that talks about faith in the midst of the storm, and how do we worship, and how do we keep our eyes on Christ even in the midst of a storm. The other video I'm going to link to is about a 4-minute video of Casting Crowns explaining the meaning of the song. Not only is it great to read the lyrics of a song, but it's fun to listen to the writer of those lyrics to explain why they wrote what they wrote. So I think that song and that explanation will be thematically connected to the passage today. But I think it'd be a good passage to read not only today, but since I don't give you anything new on Saturday or Sunday, I encourage you to read these same 6 verses on Saturday and on Sunday. Allow these ideas to resonate in your mind. The question, Jesus, don't you care? Jesus saying, where is your faith? And then the ultimate question, who is this guy that even the wind and the seas obey him? Those are good things to think about this weekend. See you Monday.